Make sure to check us out on Letterboxd for written reviews.
for films that we've done not only on the podcast, but outside of the podcast too.
Links in the description below.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rewatch podcast. My name is Jayden.
And I'm Samuel.
And this is a podcast where we talk extensively about a certain film and then decide whether they deserve a rewatch from you. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other place that you listen to podcasts. And if you enjoy the show, please leave a like on the YouTube video. If you'd like to reach the show, you can leave a comment on YouTube or send us an email at the1rewatchpodcast@gmail.com. What are we going to be talking about today, Samuel?
So we're going to be talking about a very exciting new superhero film. Not going to lie, 2023 so far, we're halfway through the year, and it's been pretty terrible in terms of releases. But thankfully, it looks like we're over that sort of dry spell at the start of the year, which kind of always happens. And now we're getting into some of the serious, hard-hitting titles. So we're talking about Across the Spiderverse today, obviously the sequel to Spiderman Into the Spiderverse, which was our very first podcast that we ever did. So it's a pretty special one, getting to do another podcast for the sequel.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I'll just start with a synopsis on the film. So after reuniting with Gwen Stacy, Miles Morales, Brooklyn's full-time friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, is catapulted across the multiverse where he encounters a team of spider people charged with protecting its very existence. But when the heroes clash on how to handle a new threat, Miles finds himself pitted against the other spiders and must redefine what it means to be a hero so he can save the people he loves most. What do you think of that synopsis?
I mean, it's long. It's kind of symbolic in the movie in the sense that, there's a few different moving parts, and then at the same time, this is probably going to be the synopsis for the next one as well. The next film could just be, the synopsis for the next film could just be Miles continues his journey through the multiverse. They deal with all of the main ideas in that synopsis, and they've crammed it all in there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it looks pretty long, but that's no indication of the quality of the film, or how messy or not messy it is. Letterboxd has some pretty terrible plot synopsis sometimes, so
it's pretty generic, isn't it?
Yeah. It doesn't exactly inspire excitement amongst the movie-going population, but they often don't. So
yeah, I have an issue with the title, and I think we'll get onto this later on because it might invoke some spoiler territory. But look, I understand Into the Spiderverse as a title. It worked pretty well for the first one. They were spoilers for anyone that hasn't seen Into the Spiderverse, but if you're watching the second podcast that we've done, I'm assuming you've seen the first movie. It's sort of, it was the start of the Spiderverse in terms of this animation sphere, and that works as a good title. And I think Across the Spiderverse also works as a good title. But when you look at the third movie, it's like, what does Beyond the Spider-Verse even mean? How is there something beyond this? Like, what could they possibly come up with that translates to that title? Like, I just can't fathom it. Are they going to merge live action with this? What are they going to do? Like, it's a really weird title to choose. But then again, I'm also leaning on the side of I hate movie titles that have part 1 and part 2 in them, so I guess I'm just going to take what I get, but I don't know.
Yeah, across the Spider-Verse and then beyond the Spider-Verse. I mean, and let's not forget the very first movie is Into the Spider-Verse.
Mm.
So these are all of these movies are going to be connected by this common thread
Mm-hmm.
being the Spider-Verse, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, they could have maybe gone with Spider-Verse colon something,
Yeah.
instead of putting Spider-Man, but you got to put Spider-Man in there because that's the moneymaker. That's you got to have the tagline in there. You couldn't have Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy
Yeah.
in the title. You have to have Spider-Man, and then you have to cram in some other things just to tell tell the main movie-going audience what it's kind of about. But then across the Spider-Verse, beyond the Spider-Verse, into the Spider-Verse, it's all garbage. Like
Mm.
it doesn't mean anything.
Mm.
Um, it's just different words.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's just you just know that like I don't expect that in the next film there's going to be something that is more significant than the Spider Verse or the multiverse or whatever,
Mm.
um, because it's literally the most significant thing you can get. Like I don't understand how you could
I
go
feel like they've
beyond it.
already done it all. Like, what else can they do?
Mm.
Obviously, spoilers, so we won't really get into it. But I mean, this movie covered a hell of a lot of stuff. So
Yeah, I mean, and so did the first. Like the first movie was the first movie that really, in terms of the comic book space as a whole,
Mm.
it was really the first film that was well recognized and sort of just a very popular film globally
Mm.
that used this concept of, well, what if you're a Spider-Man in one world and
Yeah.
now there's a different reality where instead of a Spider-Man, it's a Spider-Woman.
Yeah.
So what if that exists? Because obviously these concepts have been around in comic book stories for a while, and they're very controversial. Sometimes the fans love them, and sometimes they're they're sort of very controversial, and fans don't like them very much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this was the first. Into the Spider-Verse was the first film to sort of prove that you could use this concept, but then also tell a good story, sort of as a sort of symbiotic
Yeah,
thing with the
outside of like the
Spider-Verse.
multiverse concept, it still exists as a very, very good film. Like,
Yes,
and I
and,
feel
and
like
we've
that's pretty
seen,
rare. You know,
yeah, and
like
we've seen a lot of films that have come out since then that rely on the multiverse
as
without
a cash
actually,
grab.
without actually having that heartfelt story
Mm.
behind it. You
Mm.
know, Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness. Did we do a podcast on that one?
Yeah, yeah, we did.
Yeah, yeah. I've just
Go watch
completely
it.
forgotten about it.
Yeah, but I know
But yeah,
what you mean. Like,
that's a
it's
great example, right, of
yeah,
just a movie that's using this mechanism, this comic book mechanism of what if you could just turn every universe on its head and do all sorts of possibilities
mm,
and you know produce a film around that.
yeah.
You know.
Anyways, let's get into the stats of um the movie. So 4.7 on Letterboxd. This might be one of the highest rated films on Letterboxd right now.
I
Um,
think it is. I think it is. I think they said
which
that it
is
was.
insane, man. Like
And
that's crazy. And just for our
yeah,
viewers out there, just for like a reference point, um, The Dark Knight, which is a go to, is a 4.4, I think. Um, Shrek 2, because why not?
well, it's
Shrek
one.
2,
I mean, it's one of the greatest movies of all time. So,
right? So Shrek 2's a 4. Um, and
well,
what's like another?
that's low.
Let's chuck Parasite in there because I think
Yeah,
Parasite's probably also a high rated one. 4.6. So
yeah. And so, okay, so that sort of brings up my point here of what I was going to say on this topic.
mm,
Um, Parasite is a very film nerd friendly movie,
mm-hmm,
and it's a very popular movie on Letterboxd as well. And something about Letterboxd is that Into the Spider-Verse, if you use Letterboxd as a platform, you will see on the homepage they always have like the top 10 watched, top 10 talked about films.
Yeah.
And it's always a good gauge. You can usually see like the new releases and stuff like that. It's a great platform. But one thing that you notice is that Into the Spider-Verse is on there a lot, and
Hmm.
so is Parasite. And that's not really because of something that's happened in the news. It's just because they're really popular films on the platform.
Yeah.
And so I think so. There's 8 million Letterboxd users just in general, or active users, and so two 290,000 people have logged the review. So logged Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse so far, and I believe Into the Spider-Verse is the most.
2.17 million.
Yeah, and I think that's the most logged film on the platform.
Mm.
So it's important to take that into account as well. But then at the same time, we can't really use that to explain why this 4.7 is so high when we look at platforms like Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, less reliable platforms,
Yeah.
but they're also having incredibly high scores.
Well, that's a good segue into this. So, Across the Spider-Verse currently has a 9.1 on IMDb, which is really high, and a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is also really high, but Rotten Tomatoes rates pretty they're pretty lenient with their
Yeah,
ratings.
Rotten
So
Tomatoes is probably my least favorite platform
yeah.
in terms of review, like to where to go to get criticism. Because first of all, most people don't understand how it works. If there's a 60% score, it means 60% of reviewers think it's better than 50%,
Mm.
and so they think it's a good movie, and then the 40% thinks it's a bad movie.
Mm.
Um, but then when Captain Marvel came out, they changed the algorithm because it was getting such a low audience score. So I just don't trust Rotten Tomatoes after.
Letterboxd is my go-to, and that's why we always
Yeah,
kick
yeah,
it off with
exactly.
that.
But I think this whole discussion is pointing, in one direction, and that is this 4.7. Well, first of all, is it going to remain a 4.7? Is there some sort of recency bias? Is everyone just being a bit sucked into the hype? And then secondary, is this film a 4.7?
Is that a rhetorical question, or do you want me to
No,
answer
no,
that?
I'd love you to answer both.
I think a 4.7. It's not going to remain a 4.7. Usually, there's a bit of a drop off with films, and there is recency bias. That being said, um,
I mean, so what's the first one actually? Let me just check.
4.4. So
Okay, that's
no,
very
sorry,
high as well.
4.5. 4.5 is the
Okay,
first
see
one.
that's very high as well, and that's a great movie. So it deserves, I think, to be 4 point something. But I don't know if it quite deserves to be above The Dark Knight.
I think
you know,
I think at minimum 4.3 is pretty good. Um, yeah, I'd say a 4.3 is very inaccurate representation of what this movie is, and yeah, but a 4.7 is a bit. That's really high, and I mean that's
it's
the
almost
best movie on the
outrageous.
platform right now.
So, for instance, so I said that 290,000 people have logged the film. Of those, 61% have given it a 5 star. Like,
Mm.
that's incredible. Like, in terms of the averages, because you have to take into account, like, people who are just going to give it 0 just because they hate having fun. And people like to be contrarians and say, well, actually, everyone else thinks that this is really good, but I'm actually a film student and I know that it's actually a 2 star. Um, so there's always going to be those people, but there just seems to be dominating on the 5 star reviews. So
Yeah, and look, I think obviously you have to take into account like there's only been 290,000 ratings of this, so you have to look at the ratio. Like compared that to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where 2 million people have logged it, um, and it still has a 4.5 rating. There's a significant difference there. Obviously, the rating's going to be higher for Across the Spider-Verse because less people have seen it. Um, So that's just that's just general stats. But I think we might be getting a bit off the ball here, just talking about stats and such. Let's
Oh,
move
we
on
love it.
to directors. I had concerns about the directors
I don't blame you. I don't blame you looking
because
at
they got
them.
it so right with the first one with Rodney Rothman, Peter Ramsey, and Bob Persiati, I want to say. And then they just switched directors for the second one, all new directors. And I had concerns because these directors have done pretty much nothing. Like they've done
Yeah,
lowball DC
only
films.
only one of them has actually done anything else, and
But
that's the guy that's done like a couple DC shorts, so like a
yeah,
couple 10-minute cartoon sequences.
but I think what
Um,
makes these films so good is the backbone that they have with Phil Lord and Chris Miller, and to boot Amy Pascal as well, because she's also really good. Um, and they've continued, those three people have continued across both of the films, and I think they're doing the third one as well. So to me, that's where the strong note is. It's with those
mm,
three people. And I think I can speak for both of us when we say we love Phil Lord and Chris Miller and what they do. Um, they've done the Lego movie, they've done the Lego Batman movie. If you haven't seen Mitchell's vs. the Machines, it's also a really good movie. Obviously, these two Spider-Man films. They're just like a really good duo that make really, really solid movies. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, not a bad movie, but
oh, did they
put it
direct
in the
that
mix.
one?
Uh, Producers, I think they were.
Okay, yeah. See, they don't like to direct a lot, actually, do they?
No.
Because obviously they were involved with the Lego Movie, and they directed that one.
Yeah, so sorry, they did direct Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and they also directed the Lego movie and
Okay.
21 and 22 Jump Street, which,
Yeah,
yeah.
interesting. But yeah, the Lego Movie. I mean, we did a podcast on that. That is just one of the best animated movies to come out in recent memory.
Mm,
And then they went from that, and they didn't do the second one, um, which they
which is
easily
why it
could
was
have.
terrible.
Yeah, and it was bad. But then they moved from that straight into the Spider-Verse, the first
Well, I
film.
think they did the Lego Batman movie. So,
Well, they did they write that one as well, or because they didn't direct that
um,
one. Maybe they were producers.
no, you're right. They didn't write it. Um, so they've done Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs was early on in their career. Um, then they also did Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2. Uh, then I think they did the Lego movie. Lego movie. No. So they did the Lego movie, Spider-Man to the Spiderverse, Lego movie 2, and then obviously this one that we're talking about now.
I mean,
In
that's an
terms of
incredible run of
writers,
movies.
that's an
That's
insane run of movies, and I feel like not enough people talk about these guys in the film industry. Like
mm,
they are
yeah, and
headlining the animation game right now.
because they were supposed to do Solo,
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars story, weren't they? And then they got fired by Kathleen Kennedy,
Yep.
which just
And what
goes to
else did you
show.
just find out about?
And so they were also they were the first people, I think, who were consulted about this upcoming Flash movie all the way back in 2016 or whatever. So that would have been right off the heels of the Lego movie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they were talking with Zack Snyder. They were doing they did a treatment for the Flash film, and
Mm-hmm.
then obviously all of the stuff with Snyder happened. So I imagine they just split and then went off to Sony to make this franchise. But my goodness, I mean, Star Wars and DC both fumbled these guys,
Mm-hmm.
and that is a crucial mistake because their writing in not only the Lego movie but Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and now Across the Spider-Verse, the writing is what makes these movies so good.
Mm.
The dialogue, the humor that's injected in every scene but never takes away from the stakes
Mm-hmm.
is just beautiful, and it reminds me of the old Pixar movies with their charm and the sort of the heartfelt themes in them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just the characters always go on really interesting journeys. They're very character focused movies, um, except for maybe the exclusion of the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs.
Hey, that's a good movie, man.
It is, but it's not as good as the Lego Movie and
No,
Spider-Man to the
no.
Spider.
But
They
I
sort
do
of
like that movie.
as they kind of grew up a bit, but not enough, obviously, because they then went into the Lego Movie, which is not a very grown-up movie. But they are excellent writers, and yeah, to fumble these guys, I mean, you got to be an absolute idiot. But then again, they are. So
Yeah, yeah.
DC and Star Wars, they are absolute idiots. We know this.
Exactly.
This is common ground. We've been over this before.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they bring their same level of creativity into the sequel, which is what I was worried about as well, because I thought that they were going to direct this film, and once I found out that they weren't, I thought maybe they were just producers, and as soon as somebody becomes just a producer, you never know like how much they're actually,
Involved.
yeah.
Mm.
So they could be really invested, or they could just be receiving a paycheck while they're off doing another project.
But yeah, it's really good to see that they still have major voice in these movies, and even into the third one, I think they're still sort of involved in that chair. So, I mean, I've got
It
really
gives me
high
hope.
hopes for the third one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um.
yeah. I definitely trust their vision, and
Yeah.
whatever they do next. I mean, whether they, after they complete the Beyond the Spider-Verse, whatever they go off and do, I'll certainly be watching.
For sure. For sure. Um. So let's move on to. I'll ask you: would you recommend this film to someone who hasn't seen it?
I think if you're a Spider-Man fan, absolutely, this is one that you're going to have to see.
Mm-hmm.
It just nails a lot of the Spider-Man mythology, and in terms of like the themes in Spider-Man films,
Yep. And
just the theme.
I want to ask
Yeah.
you as well, because I've been asking my dad for so long to watch Into the Spider-Verse, and he always brushes it off because it's an animated movie.
Oh yeah, that's slander, man. I don't like
So,
people that say that.
so
Just
in terms
but,
of people who wouldn't otherwise watch movies like this, would you recommend Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse to that specific audience?
yeah, because it reminds me, this franchise, and same with the first Lego movie and the Shrek movies, the first and the second. They're movies that are probably going to be most enjoyed by, maybe the 6 years old to 14 years old
Mm-hmm.
age range. The bright colors. Um, it's obviously not like a gory action movie. Like, it's all PG. The humor's very, it's very tame.
Mm.
So you could say like it's a kids movie, but this is the thing that we're missing a lot today is back in the olden days when Pixar were making good movies, they made movies that were for kids but were so good and had such good writing and good humor that they also appealed to adults.
Yeah.
And it's the same with the Shrek movies and the examples that I said just before. And I think this franchise is a great example of bringing that back, and kind of like Puss in Boots, which kind of set the world on fire at the end of last year, because it was just really, really good. Or was it earlier this year?
Puss in
That
Boots?
was no, it was the end of last year, wasn't it?
last
It was
year.
like,
Yep.
yeah, right on the edge. But yeah, so the first film is a really good movie about friendship and family. But a lot of people will just say, "Oh, I'm not into Spider-Man and the bright colors and whatever. It looks like a kids' movie," and that's fine. People can say that, but yeah, it. These are films that
I think they
transcend.
challenge the animation game. Like, that's what they're doing right now.
Yeah, I don't think you can just write off a movie just because it's animated.
Mm.
Um,
In some ways, it's better than live action. At least,
yeah,
now.
yeah.
I think.
Yeah, they can definitely do much more with the format, and they have more sort of creative freedom than you would with real life actors because you have to manage them. But yeah, I mean, the first film won an Oscar. It's very well reviewed, and a lot of people that I speak to that perhaps wouldn't be superhero fans have seen it and liked it. So
Yeah.
I think if you've seen the first one, definitely go out and see the second. But if you have not seen the first one, then you need to go and watch that one because you'll need the details
Yeah.
from that first movie. It's this isn't a standalone adventure. This movie doesn't work in the sense that The Dark Knight works independently of Batman Begins and The Dark Knight Rises. The Dark Knight's a great film beginning to end. It just also happens to be the middle film in a trilogy of Batman movies that are connected.
Yeah.
This film is sort of a direct continuation of the story, and it's going to directly lead into another film, and you will have to watch all three to understand the full story. At least in the first film works by itself. Obviously, it's an
I was
origin
just going to
story.
say that.
But you need to watch that one to enjoy the second and obviously the third.
Yep. Yeah. So moving on, it's interesting that you also bring up Puss in Boots: The Last Wish because people that were involved in that have also done these Spider-Man movies, and I think also Mitchell's vs. the Machines, and
because it's very similar animation style, isn't it?
It's sort of like this higher mind of animation, like this evolution of animation, and they've got like their own little gang of people that work on these films that are sort of challenging the game, and it's really cool to see like these people come together and work on all these different IPs to make these franchises.
How would you
incredible.
describe like the artistic style of these movies? It's very difficult to sort of put into words. Just the visual elements here, because it's a very good looking movie, obviously.
Well, the first one was just sort of ripped out of a comic book, is the way that I would describe Into the Spiderverse.
But it's not 2D, right? It does have like 3D elements.
No, it's got 3D elements. And then there's also like hints of like expressionism in this one. Like some of the animation, particularly in Spider-Gwen's universe, it goes along with like the mood and what's happening in terms of the story. But we'll touch on that later on. But there's definitely an evolution of animation in terms of from the first movie to this movie, which they knocked it out of the park. So,
oh man, I can't wait for this movie to come out 4K. It's going to look so good.
It's going to look beautiful, isn't it? I think I have the first one on 4K. I might have to double check, but if I have the first one,
I've definitely got it.
I'll probably pick up the second one.
It's going to look so good.
I know I have the Lego movie on 4K, so I still need to watch that on 4K, but I'm sure that would be amazing. Is this film worth a rewatch to someone who has already seen it?
Yes, yeah. I'm going to need to go and see this movie again. I don't know whether I'll make it to the cinema or not, just because the next couple of weeks are going to be really busy for us. But and then we also have to see the new Jennifer Lawrence movie at least 3 times. So I'm going to be pretty busy in terms of my movie watching, thanks to Jennifer Lawrence's new movie No Hard Feelings, coming out June 15th, I believe. Or June 12th or something. But then we've also got The Flash, so it's a very busy
Why
time.
do you know the date, bro? That's way too specific.
Because I'm counting down the days, that's why.
I need you to... have you got that saved in your calendar? Please
I save all my movies, like all the movies that I think I'm going to go and see in the calendar.
You're a man of cinema. What are you doing?
Yes, I am. I have Oppenheimer and Barbie in there as well.
So, I'll let those pass, but no hard feelings.
Mission Impossible as well. But
that's fine.
Yeah. So yeah, it's I don't know whether I'll get to go see it again in the cinema, but obviously I'm definitely gonna pick up the 4K as I just mentioned,
Mm.
and I'll watch this movie a lot. I've probably seen the first film. I don't know how many times I've logged it on Letterboxd specifically, but I've probably seen the first film over 5, 6, 7 times,
Yeah, same.
and it just never gets old. It's just such a tight script,
Mm.
and yeah. So
It's just such an easy watch, and I watched it the day before watching this movie just to
I should have
you
done
know
that, but yeah.
yeah, and it just flies by, man. Like it's a 117-minute runtime or something
Yeah,
like that,
yeah.
and just under 2 hours, and like it just flies by. Like it's so efficient,
Mm.
and it's always just such a great watch. Let's segue into the cast. Any standouts for you?
Look, man, Haley Steinfeld is she's she's my world. Let's be real. But everyone else is okay as well, I guess.
This is just like
No,
a Haley Steinfeld appreciation podcast.
yeah, no. Honestly, though, I'm not like the Shami Moore, however you say his name, and Haley Steinfeld. Like
Shimmy Moore.
they're the two most prominent characters, and like their voice acting performances are okay. Like they're not asked a lot of
Mm,
in terms of the script, but
yeah,
that makes it sound like the script's not good. But you just know what I mean. Like the emotional performances, they're not really necessary. Um, this isn't sort of like a Tom Hanks, um, Tim Allen sort of scenario
yeah,
where the voice acting, though the voiceover performances are just so good that you have to write home about it. But they're reliably good, and Jake Johnson as well returns. He was obviously my favorite from the last film,
oh,
and
was he?
there's some good additions as well. Oscar Isaac is a quality actor,
Hmm.
absolute quality, and then also Daniel, how do you say his last name? Kaluuya.
Oh yeah, yeah. Herbie
He was,
Brown.
yeah. So
Hmm.
he's in like Nope and Get Out and all the
Great
Jordan Peele
actor.
movies. Yeah, sensational, and so he was great as well. But yeah, this cast is just stacked.
Mm,
Yeah, I won't say a few others because it's probably spoilers, but yeah, I mean everyone's very competent, everyone's very good, and everyone plays their role.
yeah, I think we have to mention Jason Schwartzman while we're at it. Another really, really fantastic actor who you'd find a lot in a Wes Anderson movie. In fact, I think he's in all of the Anderson films, or quite a quite a lot of them, from what
Hmm.
I can see. Um, he also plays one of the evil boyfriends in Scott Pilgrim, if you've seen that movie.
No,
But I think he might have had the standout voice performance here.
I
Um,
honestly I second that. I
yeah,
second that. Yeah.
like I know what you mean when you say they're not expected a lot of, or to do a lot of work. Like, and I
Mm.
think that just comes down to really good casting. Like, what they do is just like bread and butter for them, and I
Yeah, like
think
they just speak. I think the only people that really do a performance in this film is Jason
mm,
Schwartzman
yeah.
and Daniel Kaluuya,
But even
because
with
they,
Daniel
they
Kaluuya, like he
no, but he's
speaks.
changing his voice. He doesn't speak like that. He doesn't speak like Spider Punk. You know what I'm
No, no,
saying?
no.
Like
You need to go and watch him in interviews. I just watched an interview with him before. The accent he has with the character and his accent in real life, it's actually from the same region in the UK.
really,
Yeah.
because
So
that's just like his voice was just so it was hilarious, but it was like this really deep British, I don't know, like the subset of British accent you would call it, but it was just absolutely hilarious. So he was Spider-Man, he was like punk rock Spider-Man or something like that.
yeah,
Spider Punk.
yeah, Spider Punk, Herbie Brown.
Yeah, and oh, he was incredible. So yeah, but let's go back to Spot.
Hmm.
He, that acting performance. What did you like about it specifically?
Oh man, like he just nailed like the humor. Like,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, it's just like such an interesting. character to start with. Like, no one's heard of the Spot, and it's kind of like what James Gunn did with all of the D-list characters in the Suicide Squad. But no, I think the way that he spoke and the way that he presented himself was just like a really interesting take. Like and I think the transformation of the character throughout the film was also really good.
Hmm.
Like that first, maybe call it like half hour of the movie where we were introduced to the Spot. Incredible writing, man. Like they nailed it.
Yeah, yeah. The guy that Miles throws a bagel at.
Yeah, so
That's
it's
hilarious
the
because
bagel guy.
everyone remembers that like moment because it's just one of those very short, blink and you miss it sort of things, but great sort of comedy in that first movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Spot, I'm just looking at now. Like Spot is a Marvel villain.
Yeah, no, he's an actual villain.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
thought they it just seemed like a villain that because it worked so well with the story they were telling. I just assumed that this was an original character that they created, um, but that goes to show how well integrated this story is with some of the comics lore, which I really
Mm,
appreciate.
mm.
It's always
And
good.
that's what I love about these movies is the appreciation that they have for the source material, and the fact that they can take these nobody characters and just throw them on the big screen and it works, man. Like just really really solid writing. And I've been doing a bit of research because I want to know more about this the Spider universe and all of the different characters. And yeah, no, it is an actual character, and he set up this squad, like sort of like the Suicide Squad, or like Batman's sort of I don't know what Batman would call his, but like how you have like the um, Spider-Man's what's it called, the Sinister Six, sort of like that. He set up a Sinister Six squad called like
Mm.
the Loser Society or something,
Right.
which was just full of like a bunch of D-list characters. So it's cool to know that these characters actually have an origin and that they're being
Mhm.
used. It's not just another um, Joker or another rendition of Vulture or something like that. A character that we've already
Mm.
seen. So
Yeah.
it's cool to see refreshing characters.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And I think obviously we've seen in the trailer there's a lot of different Spider-Men that are being pulled into the film um, through this sort of Spider Society, which I won't
Hmm.
talk about much more, but you see in the advertisements there are a lot of different Spider-Men in the background. And, those Spider-Men, they all have a connection to some sort of source material, whether it was one page of a comic book or it's Miles Morales. All of these characters are coming from the Marvel comics, and I just really hope that the creators of those characters were sort of fairly compensated and recognized, because I know it's a tough industry, and a lot of writers, they go in, they create these characters, and then they just get kicked off the
Mm.
project, and then they never see a single piece of cash, for co-creating a character like Bane, who's then goes on to be in $1 billion Dark Knight Rises movie. It's just stuff like that. So you just really hope that Sony and Marvel sort of did their homework and really sort of honored, at least gave a good credit to all of the creators of
Mm.
these different characters, which would have been very hard to do because there's just so many of them.
Yeah.
Some poor Sony intern spent many days just researching who created that character in the background,
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot
so
of
they
work
could
that goes
stick
on
the
behind
name
the
in the
scenes.
credits. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, let's go on to the visuals if you don't have anything else to talk about,
No, no.
acting and characters wise. What did you think of the visuals in this movie?
Um, Look, I think the I recall when we talked about the first film and its visuals, we were very positive, and my only sort of negative for the film was the lower frame rate that they use in some of the action scenes can be a bit disorientating. And
Really?
I actually that yeah, I said that in the first film,
Oh.
when we did the podcast on it, and and I actually didn't have the same problem for this one, so I appreciate that. I don't know whether they actually did up the frame rate or not, or maybe I just adjusted to the Spiderverse sort of style. But they obviously went and just worked very, very hard at making this movie as visually interesting as they can. I did feel like sometimes there was a lot going on the screen, and I just couldn't take it all in. Especially when you're seeing it on a big screen in the cinema. It's just so loud. Like the colors are just so loud. You don't know what to focus on. Everything's happening really, really fast. I think once you get the disc at home and you can see it on a slightly smaller screen, it'll be less sort of jarring. But I did find at some stages that there was just a lot of information. I felt like I didn't know where to look. Did you do you have that at all? Or?
Yeah, like I know what you mean when you say you feel a bit overwhelmed with all of the animation that's going on. Like, it's funny because before we actually went into the movie theater, we saw a sign out the front which had like a epilepsy warning for, I think it was
Guardians 3.
Fast, yeah, Guardians 3 and Fast X. And I remember saying to you after the movie, like the first opening sequence, even with the opening titles, like who made the movie, I was having like an epileptic fit in my chair. Well, it's a bit of an over exaggeration, but like it was just so bright.
Yeah, it was a lot there, especially those opening credits. They really went for it, and I think it was almost a bit too much.
It was a bit too much. I understand your concerns and gripes when you say that the animation it might be a bit too much in certain sequences, but to play devil's advocate here, in the first film they actually animated Miles at a lower frame rate to show that he was not as, what's the right word to use here, not as experienced as Peter Parker or Gwen.
Right.
And then when he actually had his moment in the first movie where he, sort of became himself towards the end of the film, they animated him in a higher frame rate, which is just a really, really cool touch. So I feel like a lot of it is purposeful, but I know what you mean when you say it can get a bit out of hand at times.
Yeah. And the movie just looks so good in every other scene that it's fine. And I don't think I'll have the same problem when I'm viewing it at home.
Yep.
But yeah, I think sometimes it was just a bit much. Like they were just trying to do too much, and maybe that's a thing where the editor is looking at their monitor with the film on it and going, "Oh yeah, this looks so good. Like look at all those visual elements." But then there needs to be somebody there saying, "Well, remember, we're putting this on a screen that's like 20 meters wide."
Yeah.
And so we need to take that into account. But yeah, if you have epilepsy, like don't see this movie. Like my goodness.
Yeah, you need to be very careful. Like that's a genuine warning.
Yeah.
Don't take that lightly. What was your favorite? That might be entering spoiler territory. I might ask you that question later on.
Should we talk about the score?
Yeah, let's talk about the score.
Because obviously the first film, like that score, not only the actual like composing, but also the pop songs that are attached to the film that were made especially for the film.
I'd mostly call it like rap. Like it's...
But, I didn't mean to sort of categorize the music. I just mean like, popular songs that are put in, like, Sunflower obviously was the main one. Like those songs are just so iconic now. And even, the Spider-Man theme that they use in that film, just brilliant. So we had high expectations for the sound and the music coming into this one. So what did you think?
Yeah, obviously huge fan of the original track. Like you said, both Daniel Pemberton's work as the scorer of the film and then also the compilation album. Standout tracks on the first one probably have to be Scared of the Dark. Also, I mean, Sunflower was just a great song. What's Up Danger is also really good.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But
Because What's Up Danger and Scared of the Dark are actually utilized in the film for emotional purposes.
yeah,
Whereas Sunflower was just like a song that he put on his headphones, so that wasn't actually like used in the film. But I just that What's Up Danger scene and then the Scared of the Dark scene, like those montages just worked so well. And am I wrong, or do we not have any of those in this film?
I wouldn't say you're. I'm kind of sitting on the fence here, and I think I say that because I haven't seen this film enough. And the reason that I connect with all of the songs from the first movie so much is because I've seen the film so many times. Like, I think if I see this movie again and again and again, I'll start to really connect with these songs. And I actually am connecting with these songs, sort of. Like, I've listened to the soundtrack at least 4 times over,
Oh, nice.
and I already have my favorites. So I wouldn't say the soundtrack's better than the first one, but it's not particularly bad. I think Metro Boomin he's a great producer, just phenomenal producer. Like, he's done several tracks that I would hope you would know of. So he's a big time producer, and it worries me because I think he might be doing the next one, and the reason, my only gripe with it is that I feel like some of the songs feel a bit rushed. And the reason they feel rushed is because he's doing like 3 different projects at the same time right now. Like, he's just done his solo album.
Right.
I think he's doing a collaboration album with, I want to say, Jid or Future. And then he's just done this one as well. So he's got so many projects going on at the same time that it feels a bit rushed, and you don't have your standout tracks.
Yeah.
But it's also a shame because I would have loved to see some returning faces on the soundtrack. Like, you have XXX Tentacion on the first one, Juice WRLD.
He couldn't have returned.
Unfortunately not, right? Like, those people have passed away, and they're phenomenal artists.
Post Malone could have come back though.
Post Malone could have come back.
Great. Yeah.
But you do have returning faces. Like, you've got Lil Wayne who returns. I think you have Denzel returns. Sway Lee returns, I think, as well. So there's people that return, but you've also got new recognizable people in the industry. Later on, when we talk about the Spotify playlist, we'll get into which ones we're going to add and whether you have any points on that.
I'm not too familiar with the score as of yet. I will listen to it eventually, but yeah, I'm a huge fan of the first film's score, like all of the songs. So yeah, high standards.
Cool.
So a common misconception that I've seen amongst some fans, amongst this, the Spider-Man community and just the movie watching community, film nerds, I guess you could say, is that, they're coming out of this film and saying, well, it was a part 1, so, we're not going to see everything in this film because, there's been a common criticism amongst reviewers that, similar to how people treated June, they said, well, it was a great film, but I felt like it just ended. And now I have to wait to see what the next part's going to be before I can decide whether this is a good movie or not. So people are coming out of this one because obviously June was a part 1, part 2 affair. Everyone knew that, we were getting the first half of the book in the first movie, and then hopefully we get the second part. And for this film, when they first announced this, they said, okay, we're doing part 1 and part 2. So, we did Into the Spiderverse. Now we're going to do another one. It's going to be part 1. Then we're going to finish it off with part 2. Then they went, radio silent for a few months, and they came back and they said, okay, so how we're doing the part 1, part 2? It's called Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse and Spider-Man Beyond the Spiderverse. So they took out the whole part 1, part 2 thing, but it's still a part 1, part 2 affair, isn't it? Like, it's so So I guess the point for discussion is, can we treat it as if it's a part one film if it's not called part one? If you know what I mean. Like, can we give it the benefit of the doubt and say, there's some really interesting things in this film, but we haven't seen the resolution of those because this is a part one, part two movie, because they didn't actually call it part one. So it's a Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. That sounds like just your regular old sequel movie, but it's not, because there are a lot of cliffhangers, there are a lot of loose threads that aren't resolved. There's probably some some narrating that there's probably some things we've been told by certain characters that are probably not true.
Yeah.
There are probably going to be twists to come, so this isn't a cohesive affair. It's not like a Joker film or a Batman Begins and then a Dark Knight film. They're separate but slightly connected. This is a part one, part two affair, but it's not in the title. So what do you think?
I sort of err on the side of, I like movies just having their own title. I don't like movies that have part one or part two in them. And I think that comes from the fact that movies were originally created as individual affairs where they sort of wrap up their story in a 2-hour runtime.
Right. Yes. Okay. So this film doesn't do that. It doesn't wrap up the story in its runtime. So can we hold that against it because it's not called part one?
I would prefer it to have the title it has now, to be honest. I don't... It's hard, man, because, like, if you were to include part one in it, you end up with, like, messes like the Lego Movie 2 part 2 or whatever the hell was going on there.
Yeah.
That might be the worst title I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So
I think
bad.
it's called the Lego Movie Part 2, the second part.
It's what? Like,
but,
who named that?
But let's not forget Birds of Prey and the Emancipation of One Harley Quinn was also a title of a movie.
Yeah.
So, we got to reserve the worst titled movie spot for that film.
Wait, you just said the Emancipate... Wait, what? You said Birdman, the Emancipation of Harley Quinn.
I said Birdman.
Right.
Birds of Prey.
Both of those movies have really bad titles. Is that what you're saying?
No. So the Harley Quinn movie that came out in like 2019 and bombed.
Yeah. I know that's got a bad title.
I think it's okay. So I think it's called Harley Quinn. Oh no, it's called It was first called Birds of Prey, and the Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. I think. I'm like 70% sure that's what it was first called. And that was their title. They ran with it for a while, and they realized that they were going to make like $4 at the box office. So then they changed it to like the Birds of Prey and Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
And then they just changed it to Birds of Prey.
But Birdman also has a really stupid title as well.
Well,
so
that's a stupid movie. I don't like that movie.
Birdman called a stray bullet, bro.
Anyway, so my point is, so when you look at this film, like when you're trying to review it as a film, how do you
how do you go about reviewing it?
Yeah, because it's not.
You have to review it on its own.
Yeah, but you can't because there are emotional components in this film that the film gives time to set up, but we don't get the payoff like we do in normal movies where you get the setup, you get the payoff, you get the credits. Whereas in this, you get the setup, you get a few payoffs, but not all of them, and then the credits.
Well, it's just like the Avengers Infinity War Endgame scenario. I would have hated for that to be called Infinity War Part 1 and Part 2. Like that just sounds stupid. So, yeah, to answer your question, I would much rather have it as what it is now rather than Across the Spiderverse Part 1, Part 2.
Yeah, I just think it's an interesting discussion because a lot of reviewers have been talking about that. Something else they're like a broken record, some of these guys. But whenever there's a movie that's over 2 hours long, just like take the runtime of the movie and minus it by 2 hours, and they'll say it's, well, this movie's about 43 minutes too long. And if the runtime is 2 hours and 20 minutes, which it is for this film, they'll say, well, it's a great film, but I just feel like it was 20 minutes too long. And then of course, if you ask them, okay, well,
what would you cut out?
Yeah, what 20 minutes are you cutting out? They say, anyway, like and subscribe.
Just brush it off. What do you think of the runtime?
Oh, no, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fine. Like it's a lot shorter than some other movies we've been getting, like, the Batman and stuff like that. I think it utilized its runtime well. I think what's happened here is that Sony have gone, we've got a gold mine here in Into the Spiderverse. That film was excellent. Now let's make some bank on it and do another one. And then once we finish that movie, we're just going to split it up and make it into two and pad it out a bit. So I think there are elements in this film that have been elongated in order to justify, to sort of fill the runtime up, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I'll talk about those when we get into spoiler territory, but I do feel like there are a few scenes in this film that could have been tightened up a bit. So yeah, it'd be interesting to talk about those.
Yeah.
But I think the runtime's fine. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes. We'll sit down and watch Lord of the Rings for 4 hours, and by the time
try
it finishes,
9 hours, bro.
Yeah, well, by the time it finishes, you're like, oh man, is there like a extended edition of the extended edition?
Yeah.
Like if it's good, my policy when it comes to runtime is, if you're going to make a 3-hour movie, if it's a great 3 hours, then I couldn't care less how long it is.
Yeah.
But if you make a movie that's 90 minutes long and it's garbage, like the second Venom movie, then I think the movie is terrible. It's not something...
terrible. I think Venom 2 worked so well because it was like really short. Is that what you're saying, or are you saying the opposite?
No, but that movie was bad, man.
It was a horrendous movie, but it only went for like an hour and something, which made it kind of good. Like if it had gone any longer, then I would have been, oh god, this is still going on.
But if you were going to try and rescue that movie, like if you were going to take a decent attempt at a Venom movie, like they did the first time, and obviously they failed, but it still took them like 2 hours and something to do the first one, and then the second one is just like substantially reduced, and then also worse in quality. It's like, hang on a second. So
1 hour 37 is what it is. So it's like really short.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I'm not the type of person that's like, I don't have like a perfect vision in my mind about how long a movie should be.
Yeah.
Like I don't want the new Dune film, the part 2, to be 2 hours. I want it to be however long the cinematic god of Denny V wants it to be. If he wants to make it 7 hours, then I'll be
wait,
7 hours.
Hold up. But then there's got to be some cutoff, man.
I guess then at the same time, if he was going to say, "Oh, guys, I finished the Dune Part 2 movie. It's 50 minutes." Yeah, I don't worry, Warner Bros. You're going to be very happy with me, because you know how you fired Snyder for making movies that are 2 hours and 30 minutes long. I made it 35 minutes.
That's actually an interesting conversation to have. Like, can movies be made in like a 50-minute runtime? Like, would that be successful? I don't know.
Yeah,
but that's a conversation for another day.
So what do you want to talk about in terms of the budget?
I'll just quickly say, what I can say is I feel like the pacing wasn't as good as the first one. The first one, like we were saying before, just
that's because I think they elongated it. I think they padded it out.
Yeah. The second one obviously is quite substantially longer, but I don't have any issues with that really. I still feel
I think they padded out the first third of the film. I think they padded that out a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking about the first scene, just the first couple scenes. I won't say the details about them, but
Yep.
as soon as we find out more about what this film's really about, then it goes along very quickly. It's very briskly paced.
Yep.
But yeah, it takes a bit of time to get to that stage.
Let's talk about the budget. Fun fact: first one, 90 million. What do you think the second one is?
Oh, I saw it was 100.
Yeah. So that's pretty good, right?
But so what did the first one do in terms of box office? Because I think it wasn't that big of a hit, but it may have still made some nice profit considering that's a $90 million budget is very low if you can compare it to something like Spider-Man Homecoming, which would be 200 million.
384 million is what the first one made.
Okay, so they probably made $150 million profit.
Yeah.
Not shabby at all.
That's not terrible.
Yeah.
Across the Spiderverse so far has made 209 million, which is
wow, that's big.
Yeah, ridiculous.
That's big.
So it's already breaking records. I think it's the highest opening movie of this year so far.
Wow, suck on that MCU.
Well, I mean, this is somewhat in that realm, so can we really say that?
No, this is good, so it's not really in the MCU realm.
And I hope they keep it separate, for the love of God. Just in the interest of time, I think we should probably move on to spoiler territory. Would you agree?
I would agree, Your Honor.
Okay. Ron. What?
I said Your Honor.
Oh, I thought you said Ron. I was like, Harry Potter, what? Okay, so if you haven't seen the movie, obviously proceed at your own risk. We have warned you. Spoiler territory is commencing now.
We have liftoff into spoiler territory.
So the first note that I have jotted down here is family dynamic, and that just makes me think of Dominic Toretto for some reason. But what I mean by that is, what did you think of Miles, or even Gwen's relationship with their, family? How did that work for you in the movie?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important parts of this film, and then also the first film as well.
Mm-hmm.
The family dynamic is the Spider-Man core. It's the core of these films.
Yep.
So it's really important that they nail that, and they did. I think, they gave it enough time, perhaps maybe too much time for Miles, and maybe for Gwen as well. They perhaps spent more time than they really needed to hit those emotional beats.
But I would say that they're the core of the movie.
I would much rather them spend too much time on, the actual character building and those family relationships than too little, which we've seen a lot of in other films. So I think they've got a very wise sort of policy in how they deal with that. I think we spoke about in the first film, Miles's dad and his mum are, very good characters, and I said that I hope that they continue to stay alive, and we don't know whether that's going to happen in the second one, but they made it through this one okay, as far as we know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad that they don't know that he's Spider-Man yet, and we still get a bit of that sort of, what if they find out he's Spider-Man, and we get the whole Miles is balancing his responsibilities as Spider-Man, and then his family and his friends on the other hand, and so that's classic Spider-Man stuff, and they really nailed it, which they should at this stage because we've done it so many times.
Yeah, at the same time though, it didn't really feel like they were just doing it all over again,
Right.
and I felt like it was refreshing. I really liked the dynamic between Miles's mum Rio and Miles, and I also really liked the relationship between Gwen and her father, Captain Stacy. I thought that was handled really well as well.
Yeah, Captain Stacy's a good character. I like him very much. And that opening scene with Gwen is very strong. You know, they essentially just do the movie essentially just opens with about 15 minutes worth of Gwen,
Mm.
and it's just essentially her origin story, which, I don't think they really needed to tell us because they told us in the first film, about how she had Peter Parker was her friend, and, then he died, and it's like, that's all we really need to know.
Yeah.
We know that she's a loner. But then, in that first film, she obviously goes through that arc. She doesn't want she starts off being a loner, and she rejects sort of Miles's friendship and the Spider People's friendship. And then at the end of the film, they're all happy. They come together as a team, and they're all friends. So we get that, and I felt like they sort of retrod those sort of emotional beats for the sake of people who perhaps didn't see the first film.
Mm-hmm.
Like do you feel like maybe we repeated some events and there was a bit of, oh, remember what happened last time?
I don't feel that as much as I feel like they brushed over what was a pretty big event for Gwen really, really quickly, and they kind of undermined the whole scenario. Like if you think back to Gwen Stacy's death in 2002, spoiler warning, or any other significant character that's died in Spider-Man's life outside of these animated movies, it's always given a lot of weight, but they really just brushed over Peter Parker's /
they
the
really
Lizard's
just
death.
killed Peter Parker immediately, in a very lame way as well. Like,
yeah,
it's not.
That's what I'm saying.
And yeah, maybe that's my issue, is that if they just didn't tell it to us again, we could have just, as the audience,
assumed
theorized,
knowledge.
Yeah, and just assume that. I'm going to assume that Peter Parker is a heroic guy because he always has been, and like, if you want to stay true to the character, he always will be. Like, that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. He's the main guy. He is a good person. He goes through challenges and he overcomes them. That's why we love him, right?
Mm-hmm.
But to have him just drink some green stuff and then go fight the lizard, or does he become the lizard?
No, he becomes the lizard.
Yeah, so he drinks the green stuff, becomes a lizard because he wants to be like his best friend Gwen, and it just seems all very beta male, absolute idiot. And then he just dies, and it's not like he's dying to save the city or something, or to save Gwen or whatever. He just gets a building like thrown at him or something.
Gwen throws like a building at him, so Gwen like kills him, and that sort of sets up the whole dynamic with Captain Stacy. So in a way, you could view it as like it was a necessary thing to introduce into the story.
Yeah.
But if they were going to do it, I would have liked them to handle it a bit.
Yeah, I would have done it. Yeah, do it a bit differently than him becoming the lizard. Like, why does he have to become the lizard? Why can't you just do a quick montage of him maybe getting Spider-Man powers, and then maybe you involve the Venom symbiote or something? Because I just don't like how Peter Parker, no matter what version he is just this like, oh, I want to be like my best friend Gwen. So I'm just going to drink this green stuff and be incredibly irresponsible and put everyone at danger, and then I'm going to die. It's, it just doesn't sit right with me.
It's just a bit weird.
Fan.
Let's talk about the cameos in this movie. Obviously, going into this, everyone was expecting some familiar faces to return, and I think that's just because the title is a pretty dead giveaway of what was going to happen, right? So let's kick it off with Andrew and Toby. Obviously, they appeared in this film by way of archive footage. What did you think of that?
Yeah, man, I'm just I'm glad that I didn't see something about this before I saw the film, because then I might have thought that Andrew was like actually in the film, acting. Which, if I was a betting man, I'd say that might happen in the next one. We can theorize about that a bit later. But look, always good to see, the best Spider-Man Andrew Garfield in his glory.
Yeah.
But, we did have No Way Home, and to just see a bit of archival footage, like, it would have made me go nuts, like, if this was 2018.
Yeah.
But we in the post No Way Home era, yeah, it's always cool to see them, and I'm glad that Sony are honouring them by showing that sort of footage instead of just showing something else, some other Easter egg, which, they did a lot of as well. There's a lot of different Easter eggs in this film.
Yep. I can say this. After watching No Way Home, I was sort of in a mindset where I was like, I don't think Sony's going to continue these prior Spider-Man stories. Like, I don't think there's going to be a Spider-Man 4. I don't think there's going to be a TASM 3. But man, like they've shown them so much now that it just seems like anything's possible. Like this movie has just opened a crazy realm of possibilities that
Yeah, I mean, it is entirely possible that they come into the next film.
And there's a fan base still there, man. Like, especially for Andrew
they'll
Garfield.
make $1 billion.
Like,
They'll make $1 billion again.
yeah. So, I mean, you
this
could
time they won't have to pay Marvel, because this time it's not associated with.
Well, it's a Sony property, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and that's why I think Tom Holland's not in it, because they would have needed to have. No one knows sort of the legal deal that's been, completed between Marvel and Sony with regards to how to make a Spider-Man movie with Tom Holland that's in the MCU, but it's a Sony movie. No one knows the ins and outs of that agreement, but the fact that they can just throw Andrew Garfield in here and throw Tobey Maguire in there, and it's no problem. They can throw PS4 Spider-Man in there, but there's no Tom Holland. They can throw the lady from Venom in there, but they can't throw Tom Holland in there. It does make me think, like, they'd be stupid not to just get Andrew and Tobey again, and maybe Tom Hardy as Venom. Here we go again with the theories, but yeah,
so many possibilities, man. Like, it's just crazy, and I would have liked for them to keep this animation Spider-Man universe sort of separate from the main one, to be honest, because I feel like if sometimes we just get too bogged down on cameos and such, and that sort of takes away from the actual weight of the story.
Yeah, I completely
and that's what
agree.
happened with No Way Home. Like, it's not actually a good movie. It's just a good movie because
the last third of it is as soon as Aunt May dies in No Way Home, it becomes a good movie.
Yeah. But if you take Andrew and Tobey out of it, it's a significantly worse movie. Like,
yeah, but I still like the Spider-Man. He goes through hardship, and there's the great power with great responsibility line, and he has to fight Goblin, and he hates him, but he has to, get in control of his rage, and he doesn't kill him in the end. Like, all that stuff's very Spider-Man, but let's not forget that the first 40 minutes of it is little Tom Holland running around trying to brainwash the universe because he can't get into college.
Yeah.
And it's just grey green screen nonsense, despite the fact that they're just walking down the street.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Yeah, well, there's issues with that we've talked about previously.
That's a minute-long review of No Way Home.
Yeah. Wait, did we do it? I think we did a podcast on it.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
We liked it, but we also don't like it. That's essentially what we thought of it. PS4 Spider-Man also made an appearance. What do you think of that?
Oh, I love PS4 Spider-Man. That game is just so beautiful. Really,
they hit his face.
Spider-Man. Yeah, of course they did. Yeah, they don't want us to talk about the fact that they literally face swapped him. Such a stupid decision, but anyway, they got the voice in there, so that was cool. You get to hear the Yuri Lowenthal, I think his name is. He's a great voice actor for the Spider-Man character, and yeah, he's sort of just in there. One of the Spider-Man's Miles Morales' Asian roommate is playing the Spider-Man game as well. So that's interesting because it shows that, like, in Miles Morales' universe, there is also the Spider-Man game. Yeah. But in the multiverse, that Spider-Man is there. So
Yeah.
yeah, cool, very cool. I liked all the cameos, but the thing is that this film is actually a good story. If you take all the cameos out,
Yeah.
just putting the cameos in there is just really, really fun.
And I wouldn't consider all of the cameos to be all of the people in the Spider Society. What I would consider cameos are Toby, Andrew, all of these properties that have appeared outside of um, these two movies. That's what I would consider cameos.
Right.
So no one in the Spider Society really. That's just like a whole another topic that we can talk about. Donald Glover also made an appearance, which kind of surprised me in the movie. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, no, me neither. Obviously, he plays Uncle Aaron in Spider-Man: Homecoming,
Yep.
and that was a thread that the MCU just completely forgot about.
Yeah.
Just like they did with Scorpion at the end of Spider-Man: Homecoming.
I don't think they forgot about it. I just don't think they had the rights to really proceed with that further.
Well, but they're Sony movies, so they certainly could have, but they just, they didn't Far From Home, and then they had to do No Way Home. So
yeah, but he also appears as like a prowler in this movie.
So it makes me think it's not the.
Well,
MCU.
Uncle Aaron is prowler.
Yeah, I know, but I just think it would be.
Time's passed since those two movies.
Yeah, so it could be the MCU Prowler, but
who knows?
I don't know. I mean, there's no script for the next Spider-Man movie yet, so nobody really knows. Unfortunately, we just know that Zendaya's in it, so it's going to be bad. But
the reason I think they included Donald Glover in this is just sort of
it's just a reminder to Marvel, be like, hey, remember?
well, I don't think it's even that. I think it's a nod to the origins of Miles Morales, because if you don't know the story, I'm about to drop some trivia on you.
Okay, go.
Donald Glover
created him, right? Or he was the first.
He was the inspiration for Miles Morales. So Donald Glover was sort of like campaigning for a black Spider-Man, and he appeared on the Community show, the TV show Community, in a Spider-Man costume, which you can actually see in the first Into the Spiderverse movie on Uncle Aaron's TV.
I remember you saying that. Yeah.
So, and then that got like the people at Marvel sort of thinking, what if we made a black Spider-Man? So, in a way, Donald Glover was, he was the reason that Miles Morales was created and sort of kickstarted that. Yeah. So I think it was just sort of like a thank you to the origins of Miles Morales, putting Donald Glover in this movie. That's sort of the way I look at it.
Yeah, because he is a very new character, isn't he, Miles Morales? He was only introduced in 2011, so it is interesting to remind ourselves of that, because he's obviously
he's already a household name. Like,
yeah, he's risen to prominence because of Into the Spider-Verse, and then obviously we recently had the
game,
the Miles Morales game.
Yeah. We also got some appearances from cartoon versions of Spider-Man. So
and the Lego Spider-Man. We got to talk about the Lego Spider-Man.
Let's start off with the Lego Spider-Man. Obviously, there's a connection there between Phil Lord and Chris Miller doing work on the Lego movie, and then also working on this. But I think it's also cool that they had J. Jonah Jameson come back to voice.
That's great. Yeah.
J.K. Simmons coming back to voice J. Jonah Jameson.
I mean, he is J. Jonah Jameson.
Like, he just plays him in every universe, which I find really funny. Like, he's the
except
Nolan
PS4
voice.
Spider-Man game, I think
he is or isn't.
I don't, because I think in the game, I don't think it's him.
No, I think he is in the game. I'm
really?
Gonna have to search this up now.
Because all those podcasts you listen to, I sincerely doubt that J.K. Simmons would record all the lines for the PS4 video game.
I don't think he did.
But yeah, I do like how, like what you just said, like he is a constant in the Spider-Man canon. Like, I really like that.
Yeah.
Because, they didn't show him in TASM. so it still works, right? Like it can still be J.K. Simmons in
Yeah,
canon in
yeah.
the TASM universe. So
Like they just got the casting right the first time with him, and then
he's so good in those movies, man.
yeah,
He's so
yeah.
every scene he just absolutely steals it.
And then
So
they've probably just thought since then,
he deserves to
why
just
change it?
he just deserves to like do the same character, just like early retirement, just continue play J. Jonah Jameson for like the rest of his life,
Well,
and
it's
just
sort of
make
like
like
Kevin Conroy,
millions.
like how
Yeah,
Kevin
yeah,
Conroy just voiced Batman across pretty
yeah,
much all media.
yeah. Rest in peace. What a legend.
Yeah, what a legend. Yeah, so we had appearances from Lego Spider-Man, which I thought was so cool, man. When he went
Bro,
into
he's
like the bathroom and he's like beep boop beep boop, and then he's like,
yeah.
"You're one of our best, Peter."
Yeah, I just love that. I love how the Lego guy is one of their best
Yeah,
Spider-Man.
yeah,
But what
and
I want to know, is when the Lego guy travels to um, Spider-Man 2099's universe, how tall is he? Like, is he actually minifigure size?
no, he
Or
actually makes an appearance. This is what I was just gonna say. He makes an appearance in the Spider Society.
oh, does he?
Because I was watching like a YouTube video where they show all of like the Easter eggs and
No,
such.
of course, yeah.
You know
The
where
red circles.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You know when Peter parked car pulls into the
Oh
Spider
yes,
Society,
yeah, that was a great scene.
he appears on like the windshield and he's like Lego scale. So
Oh, he's tiny.
yeah, you would
Oh
miss
my,
him if you didn't know.
oh
That,
my god.
yeah, like a really
So,
cool detail.
so how is he one of the best Spider-Man if he's that small? I don't
Who
understand.
knows, bro?
Maybe Spider-Man 2099 is just like lying to him.
Yeah,
Maybe like Lego Spider-Man has like some serious self-esteem issues. He just needs to be reminded that, you know, he's one of the best.
but
Even though he's not.
it's just like a really cool concept to think that like there's a whole universe out there just dedicated to Lego where Lego Spider-Man's going through his own hardship and
Yeah, and he's just like
defeating
a
all of
normal
his
character.
Sinister Six villains,
Yeah.
and that's happening on an infinite number of universes where every single Spider-Man is doing that.
Mm.
Man, it just makes me so excited talking about this. I sound like an absolute nerd, but who cares? So let's get into Ultimate Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man make appearances. You mentioned when we were watching the movie or just after watching the movie that there's like a hardcore fan base for
Oh
those.
man, they love that show, man. I've been trying to. I think it's on Disney Plus actually. I was trying to track it down a couple of years ago, because I just, all of these sort of Spider-Man fan accounts, I guess you could call them, they absolutely love this show. They swear by it, because obviously the old cartoon show is very popular. The one with where they first did the pointing thing.
Yeah,
Um, I think
he also made an appearance.
is that yeah, you did. I forget like the actual title of that.
I think it's just
cartoon.
called Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that one's like the really old one. But then this is a relatively recent one, Spectacular Spider-Man. This, I think it was maybe like during the TASM era. You can see that like the Peter Parker in that show is very similar to Andrew Garfield. But these fans are just crazy for it. So as soon as they saw him in the poster, they were like, "Oh my gosh!" They went nuts.
Yeah.
But he actually has a couple lines in this shot in the film, so they'd be really happy with that. So I'm happy for them, but honestly, I haven't seen the show, so I don't really. It doesn't do anything for me, but it's cool for them. I like when all those different fandoms get to sort of come together and be like, oh, that's my favorite Spider-Man or whatever, because obviously that's how I was watching No Way Home, seeing Andrew Garfield jump through the portal. I was like, oh my gosh, that's my favorite Spider-Man, and everyone's like, well, really?
Yeah.
And so now it's cool to see.
Appreciation for every single fandom, right?
Yeah, because even if a show is like not particularly well received, or it's not like doesn't like set the world on fire, like there's a core audience for everything. There's someone that like jumped out of their chair as soon as they went to the Venom universe, just because, and I'm talking like an 8-year-old kid or whatever, because he just likes Venom. Kids just like certain things. So I like it.
Well, I can speak from experience when I say I got like really excited when I saw Spider-Man Noir at the end of the movie.
yeah. So obviously they didn't want to pay Nicolas Cage for this one, but
Yeah.
he'll be in the second one.
He'll be
The
in the
next
next one,
Yeah,
hopefully.
yeah.
Let's talk about the Spider Society. So I've just sort of jotted down some of my favorite ones that I could just remember off the top of my head. Um, there were so many, man. Like, you'd have to watch it 10 times over to like catch everything.
Mm.
And even still, I mean, you'd probably miss more. But there is a ridiculous number of Peter Parker's Spider-Man, Spider-Woman in this movie. Some of my favorites, Peter Parked Car. I thought it was pretty funny.
That one's funny. I mean, the
Yeah.
humor in this movie is excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
really good. There was a T-Rex Peter Parker or
That's
Spider-Man.
interesting. Yeah. Oh no! Oh god.
And a horse Spider-Man, which I thought the that whole concept was actually pretty cool. Like the guy on the horse is like some old Western gun slinger who
Yeah,
I think his name's Web Slinger, which is pretty cool. And these are real comics, man. Like all of these exist in the real world where you can go out, pick up a comic, and read about this character, which is just so cool. Like there's so much unexplored depth and story to be known here, and it just makes you want to read these comics.
Yeah, it's just such a shame that like they're not very organized in terms of like you can't just pick up like a Spider-Man Ben Reilly comic for $30 on Amazon, because they're all comic runs.
Yeah.
So if you want to buy a comic run, you have to buy like the Omnibus, which is like $400, and it's got like thousands and like combined sort of comic runs. So I feel like DC Comics, like they have all of these really famous graphic novels like Dark Knight Returns and The Killing Joke and Kingdom Come, like all these stories that are like singular stories. Whereas I get very intimidated by Marvel Comics because you never really know where to start and what to read. You can't just sort of jump in for Civil War and sort of read that storyline and then jump out, because there are just so many different things that you need to read before you read that.
Yeah.
But I want to track down at least some Spider-Man 2099 stories and some Ben Reilly stories, and definitely want to explore more of that. I haven't read it. I've only read like the Civil War Marvel comic, so I would like to read some of the old Spider-Man stuff because it's the best-selling sort of comic character I think of all time.
I was huge into like comics back in the day, man. Like I read like so many issues of like the Avengers and X-Men, and like I just want to get back into it, man, because there's so much unexplored content there that and like that would just provide really great context for the next movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about the villain of the film, which there's a few different villains here. You sort of have like a quasi villain with Spider-Man 2099 or Miguel, and then you've also got Bagel Man / the Spot as the villain. What did you think of them?
Yeah, so obviously Spot is presented as the main villain, and you're introduced to Spider-Man 2099 thinking that this is going to be the leader of the Spider-Man team that's going to take down Spot. But then the more you get to know Spider-Man 2099, you see that, he's very aggressive. He's very sort of authoritarian. He's put himself on top. He is he's not a very kind person.
Yeah.
Like he's clearly just going to be the villain of the next film, along with Spot. But they're not going to necessarily be on the same team. They have very competing interests. So it's very interesting what they've done here, because I think both of them are very interesting villains, and they have completely different sort of motivations. Spot is this character that just wants to destroy Spider-Man, Miles Morales, and kill everyone that he loves, which is always a beautiful thing. We love that. And he's just really sort of quirky, like blob of goo, I
Yeah.
guess. And he has really funny moments. And then on the opposite side, you have like this really cool looking Spider-Man who's like, oh yeah, he looks so cool.
Mm.
But he's like not a very good person. He's clearly going to be a bad guy. He's clearly lying about a few things because his motivation makes sense, in my opinion, in this movie. Because what we're told, which I suspect might be lies, but we're told that he tried to save somebody in his universe by essentially altering the timeline, and
Well, it
by
was his
doing
daughter.
so and then by doing so, he destroyed his entire universe. So his entire world was destroyed, and so now his solution is to ensure that all of these canon events that happen to all Spider-Men happen in every universe. So it's a bit different to, what the TVA are doing in Loki and, all these different other multiverse things we've been introduced to in the past. But I think his motivation, if he's told us a true story about, his daughter and everything, I completely understand why he's doing what he's doing and why he's doing it aggressively. And so I think that's a really interesting villain. And Miles Morales is in a tricky spot because if he decides to alter the timeline, he could destroy his whole universe.
Yep.
So that would be very, very
multiple
bad.
universes.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's the thing, right? Spider-Man 2099 is sort of saying if you do that and you destroy your world, then you might destroy everyone else's as well. So yeah, I think he's an excellent villain. Excellent villain. Yeah.
Yep.
What are your thoughts? Do you like him?
Yeah. Spider-Man 2099 was really well done in this movie. To start with, I think Oscar Isaac is a really, really good decision. Fantastic actor. I'm glad that they got someone of the correct heritage isn't the right word to use here. The correct the character's origins are the same as the actor's origins.
Right.
So it makes it easy in terms of voice acting, but you shouldn't have given that role to a white actor or a black actor. Like, it has to be an actor that has that descent. So great decision there. I think the character's motives were really well done. I liked how his universe was sort of like the hub of the Spider Society, and how he's put together this secret force that protects these multiple universes, or multiverse you could call it. But like you said, like, he has really good motives, and I think that's what makes a good villain, is when you can connect with their motives. And you can in this movie, man. Like, you understand why he's doing what he does, and you also understand why Miles is doing what he does. So the viewer's kind of torn there as well as to which side they would or should sit on. And I think that's what makes a great villain. But in terms of the Spot, I think he was also a really good villain as well.
He was really creepy towards the end as well.
He was really creepy towards the end.
It's incredible. Like, he started out as like this bumbling, hilarious idiot, and then he turns into this like really, like, when he was sort of fading around into his white sort of goo, and he was like just talking really sort of like psychotic, in a psychotic way about like how he's going to kill everyone that Spider-Man loves, and he's like drifting off, and just really creepy vibes, man. I don't know what it is, but
he
they just nailed the design.
He sort of started out as like the Spots, and then towards the end he became like the Spot, if you know what I mean. Like, his character design also changed to where he was just like one black spot. But prior to that, he was like a Dalmatian, or they called him like a cow or whatever. So he went from like this joke character to like this really serious threat. And that sort of evolves throughout the movie. and I think that they did a really good job in pacing that and going between 2099 as the villain and the Spot as the villain, and I think they did a really good job of balancing that. And I like that. Sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, like, I think this film has the perfect balance of interjecting that really funny and effective humor, but then also having those moments where you're like, damn, that villain is actually scary.
Yeah.
You know, that's actually, I don't want to mess with this guy. He seems like he's out for blood. He seems like, you know, he may have been a funny, innocent guy at the start, but this guy is like really personally invested in just destroying this man's life.
Yeah.
Like, so that's pretty scary. I'm keen to see what happens there.
Very, very keen to see what happens. And I'll just raise this now because I've seen this being popping up on social media a bit. There's been this sort of trend going around where everyone's picking up on this connection between Everything Everywhere All at Once and Across the Spiderverse, where they're both connected by bagels. So bagels have kind of become like the universal or the multiversal image to describe the multiverse, which I think is really cool.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
It's just an interesting connection, and whether it was done on purpose, who knows? And I don't even know if they meant for the first film to have guy.
Absolutely not. They retcon
surely
that.
not, right?
No, they retcon that, absolutely. Yeah. But that's a great retcon. You know,
that's a fantastic retcon.
Yeah, that's just a good example of how witty the humor is. And it's just like I said for the Lego Movie. You know, it's Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. Like this is what they're so good at. You know, just making that bagel man and making him a villain. You know, they didn't need to make him the bagel man.
Yeah.
But they did.
It could have just been some random guy at Alchemex.
Yeah.
But they made him the bagel guy and it works so much better.
Yeah.
I'll just bring this up here before I think they're... Because you know how certain movies try so hard to connect one movie to another without actually putting in the effort to do so.
Yeah.
And setting that up prior to the next movie coming out. There have been things that have been set in place since Into the Spiderverse that connect that movie to this movie and serious events. And I'm not just talking about post-credit scenes that drop that 2099 is going to be in the next movie. Like when I was sitting in the movie theater and I was thinking, I was like, in the original movie in Into the Spiderverse, when we see the spider that bites Miles for the first time, the number 42 spider, that spider is glitching. So it actually shows that spider is in the incorrect universe.
Yeah, that's true.
So from the very start, we've known that the spider that bit Miles was in the incorrect universe, which is just such like a cool just decision there. Like it shows that they have a plan, that they're going somewhere. And I think that whole thing that they did in this movie with that spider that read the DNA and took them back to their correct universe, it just worked so well for the plot. And we'll talk about it later on when we get into the twist ending and whether that fooled you or whether it didn't fool you. But I can say right now, man, like I did not see that coming at all.
Yeah, no, it was a great twist at the end. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I want to mention something about this Spider Society because they are obviously being led by Miguel, Spider-Man 2099, who's clearly going to be the villain in the next film. And he's clearly the villain in this film as well. Like, you're not supposed to like him. That's pretty clear from about, 10 minutes into being introduced to the character.
Yeah.
So, there's this society that is determined to essentially kill Miles's dad, right? If his dad doesn't die naturally, they're going to go in and kill him, right? Because that's what they need to do to preserve the timeline. And that's pretty messed up. But, you can see why they want to do that. They want to save everyone. It's the whole, let's save everyone by actively killing one person instead of just being like, no, let's try and save everyone even on the possibility that it might also kill everyone. It's just the whole we're not going to trade lives sort of thing. It's Captain America's philosophy in Infinity War. It's a very, very common sort of trope.
Yeah.
But so we've seen all of our fan favorite Spider-Man cameos, like, PS4 Spider-Man and Spectacular Spider-Man, Ben Reilly. They're all in support of Spider-Man 2099, right?
Mm-hmm.
So aren't they then going to become the villains of the movie because they're part of this sort of spider cult sort of thing? And isn't that going to damage their characters? Because you're saying, well, they signed up to be Spider-Man 2099's, comrades in this mission to ensure the timelines don't explode. So if you're a fan of Spectacular Spider-Man and you're seeing him back up Spider-Man 2099, if I was a fan of Spectacular Spider-Man, I think I'd probably be quite offended. I'd be like, oh no, he wouldn't do that. He would be on Miles's team. But in order to have some sort of conflict, we need a couple of Spider-Man to be bad guys, a couple of Spider-Man to be good guys. Like obviously Gwen Stacy at the end is putting the team together of, Punk Spider-Man or Spider-Punk and, Spider-Man Noir and the rest of the gang from the last movie. So that's going to be like the little Spider-Man Avengers team, and they're going to have to go up against Spider-Man 2099 and his team.
Here's what I think about it. I think we're going to see a significant change in Spider-Man 2099 in the next movie. I think obviously the Spot's going to be the villain. I think they're going to lean two ways, and this is sort of going in towards our ending theories. I think we're either going to see the Spot come around, or I think we're going to see 2099 come around. I think either way, all of the Spider-Man are going to abandon Spider-Man 2099. So
I think so too. I think that's definitely, they'll definitely abandon him at some stage, but how long were they in support of him? That's still something that is a bit dodgy, right? Like, because they signed up for this knowing that was his mission, unless he's kept them in the dark this whole time, which is, could be a good explanation. Maybe Spider-Man 2099 saying, we're here to protect everyone, guys. Like, this is we're all trying to save everyone. We're the good guys, but then secretly he knows that he actually has to do some bad things. So I don't know.
You sort of see Gwen come around in the movie, and towards the end, you do understand that she is in full support of Miles. I think we're going to see that flood into the second or third movie, I should say, where there's more Spider-Man in support of Miles' cause. So yeah, I think that's the change that we're going to see. But I know what you mean when you say that it sort of sheds or puts bad light on these Spider-Men for supporting a cause that isn't necessarily the best.
Like, for instance, Spider-Woman, right? You know that she knows that she feels bad about what she's doing, but she's doing it anyway.
Yeah.
So doesn't that make her just a bad person? Because Gwen obviously turned back to, the light side, I guess you could say. But Spider-Woman is definitely on the dark side, and she knows that she's there, and she clearly has hesitations, but she's still on that team. She didn't leave.
I don't think there's necessarily a light and dark side. I think it's just a grey and grey side. Like, you could also argue what Miles doing is bad. Like, he's putting the fate of the multiverse at risk for his family. And it's sort of like the Civil War debate where Iron Man's side is just as right as Captain America's side.
Yeah.
So I don't think, and that's what, like we said, that's what makes Spider-Man 2099 such a good villain, is because his motives have some cause and it has some, there's a reason he's doing what he's doing. So
I'm only just looking out for those cameo Spider-Mans in the background, the Spectacular Spider-Man, because if I saw Andrew Garfield on Spider-Man 2099 side for 1 second after learning about what Spider-Man 2099 is about to do, I would be very offended, personally. Like, in terms of, I would say, hang on a second, my Spider-Man wouldn't do that. He's a
Would you
good
though?
guy.
Would you say that?
No, absolutely. I would be like, he has to be. Because, look, it's like the Civil War thing, right? As you said. You can see both sides, but the movie's clearly telling you that, Miles Morales is doing the right thing. We all know that, when you compare these two moral philosophies, you can definitely see how killing one person to save everyone is, if you look at it from the outside in, it's a good thing to do, I guess. But you really should be trying to save everyone. Like, that's definitely the thing you should be doing. And the movie's telling us that because that's what Miles Morales is doing. That's what Gwen's now doing because she's realized she was wrong. So, it's interesting. It's interesting. Another thing is towards the end of the film, obviously we find out that Miles Morales should never have been bitten by that spider, right? It wasn't supposed to happen. It wasn't a canon event, I guess you could say.
Mm.
So technically, Spider-Man 2099 is going to have to kill Miles Morales, right? Or somehow get his spider powers removed.
I don't
I
know
think
how
they
that's
were,
going
they
to
were
work.
clearly setting that up, right? Because that's why he could never have joined the team. That's why they were saying, he could never have become one of the Spider Society because he is an anomaly. He's not supposed to be Spider-Man. He's supposed to just be Miles Morales, I guess. And that spider was supposed to bite someone in World 42, wherever the spider was from.
But it
So,
still would have been... So that number 42 spider was meant to bite Spider-Man in alternate
World
Miles's
42.
universe.
Yes,
Yep.
I think so. Yes.
So
So now that that's
Miles was
not
never
happened.
meant to become a Spider-Man.
Yes, yeah. And that's why he could never have been in the Spider Society because they know that in order to correct the timeline, he's got to go.
But couldn't you also argue that it was fate that the 42 spider went into that
That's
universe?
That's Miles's argument. Exactly. Like, that's him saying, I don't care what you say needs to happen. I'm going to make my own way, which is a very sort of meta way of representing Miles Morales because, when he first came into the comics, obviously people were like, well, hang on a second, Peter Parker is Spider-Man, so what are you trying to tell me? Miles Morales is Spider-Man? No, Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And so he was sort of rejected for being Spider-Man. So it's kind of like a meta commentary on that a bit. But yeah, it was clearly said that the Spider Society would have to correct that mistake. And I don't know what correct means, but whether it's, extracting the venom from Miles Morales and, I don't know, doing something with it, or just killing Miles Morales, I guess. But that's why Gwen didn't go and visit Miles Morales, and Peter B. Parker didn't go visit Miles Morales, and all those things. So Spider-Man 2099 is going to be hunting down Miles to either stop him or kill him or something, and then he's also going to be hunting down Miles in order to prevent him from saving his father, who is supposed to die, according to Spider-Man 2099. So that's the setup for the next film. What do you think is going to happen?
I mean, there's so many alternate pathways that they could go towards. I definitely think... I don't see any reason as to why Spot would turn good as of now.
Yeah, he's lost too much. He's got.
I'd have to think about it a bit more, but I think Spot's probably going to be the main villain. I think there might be some sort of sacrifice from 2099 to save.
I think Gwen's gone. I think Gwen's going to die. Absolutely, Gwen is done.
You reckon?
Yeah, I'm surprised she didn't die in this movie. To be honest, I was getting ready for her to die when she was at the house with with Miles's dad and his mum.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the film, I thought she was going to get killed by someone then. But
No, that's an interesting thing as well, is that she could also be a sacrifice, because she name dropped the whole thing where she was saying in every universe where Miles or Gwen falls for Miles
that's
or
true.
Peter,
Yeah.
he ends up dying. But then again, Miles Morales isn't Peter, so technically they could be together, right?
Yeah, I think it's Spider-Man, so it's like Spider-Man and Gwen. Sort of
But he's
thing.
not Spider-Man.
Yeah, but she's not Gwen Stacy. She's Spider-Gwen, you know? Like,
She is Gwen Stacy.
yeah, but she's not. She's
What do you mean? Her
Spider-Gwen.
name's Gwen Stacy.
Yeah. But, like,
But what I'm saying
in
is
terms
that
of the canon, like, it's not like the correct canon would be Peter Parker is Spider-Man, Gwen Stacy isn't also a Spider-Woman, and then she dies. You know, so...
But I think there is potential that they could get together there, because what she said is that in every universe where Gwen Stacy falls for Spider-Man, or was it Peter Parker or Spider-Man?
Spider-Man. Yeah.
Something goes wrong or something like that.
Yeah.
But if Miles isn't technically meant to be Spider-Man, then wouldn't that canon event be disrupted?
That's a good point. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're going to see happen. Maybe that's the whole Beyond the Spider-Verse thing, because we're going to be moving into unknown sort of reality. You know, we're going to end up shattering all these multiverses.
Yeah.
And seeing what happens when things don't go to plan.
Yeah.
And I reckon that things could go very badly. And I reckon that at the end, it's either going to be a few people are going to die, or it's going to be the sacrifice play where they have to shut off all of the multiverses in order to preserve everything. So no more traveling. So they're going to have to like say goodbye to each other, like Toy Story 3 style, you know?
Toy Story 3 style. Damn, that was a sad ending.
And that's what I think might happen. But yeah, it's interesting to speculate. It's going to come out March 2024, so we don't have that long to wait.
I think maybe we have to make a more detailed video on this so we can look back and say, haha, we got it right. But here's my prediction.
We did it No Way Home. We like predicted that whole movie, by the way. we literally got all of the villains. We got all of them in. Yeah. Well, except I think we also said that Dane DeHaan's Goblin could come in. But apart from him, we guessed everything. We got everything correct. And we even watched that video again. We even got Andrew's coming back, so it's going to be interesting to see like how Gwen's death has affected him. Like maybe he's going to be a bit darker of a Spider-Man. But nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. And this was like a year before the movie came out.
Damn, bro.
So
that's how predictable that movie was.
Anyway, let's wrap this thing up.
Okay, let's just quickly touch on the main spider people, and I just wanted to chuck in Vulture here because I thought Vulture's design was so cool, man.
Yeah, I agree.
He was like ripped out of like a Leonardo da Vinci scrapbook or something, man. Like just the artwork and the extent of the artwork that they went to in these movies with Gwen's universe and alternate Miles' sort of more dark universe.
Yeah.
And even like that universe that the Spot sort of ducked his head into for like 1 second with all of the classic comic book dots was really cool. So I think they absolutely nailed the artwork in this movie, man, and it's just such an improvement on the first film. Like you said, the first film sort of stayed within its own boundaries in that one artwork, and then this movie just went full on just everything. So yeah, they just nailed the artwork, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it looks like a work of art, because it is,
So just in the interest of time, I just want to ask you, who out of both movies, so 1 and 2, who has been your favorite Spider-Man so far?
Oh, goodness me. I think still it's got to be Peter B. Parker from the first film.
Yep.
I didn't really like what they did with him in the second. I think he should have left the baby at home, definitely at the very end of the film, especially when he has a very capable woman in the form of Mary Jane at home. Like, it's not like she's not there.
Voiced by Zoe Kravitz.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's bizarre. That is bizarre, isn't it?
That is a
Like,
bizarre casting.
Yeah. Anyway,
It's
I
like
don't know
if
how
they
she got
can't
that
get
role.
if they can't make her a black character, they'll get a black actress to play her.
Yeah, that's so bizarre. Anyway,
What is with the
but-
hate on the gingers, man?
yeah, it's a ginger side, man.
Nothing against Zoe Kravitz, but we shouldn't be taking away roles from ginger actors.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, no, I really liked him, and then I think Spider-Man 2099 was really good in this. He was probably my favorite character. I think obviously Gwen was really good again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts?
You know me, like I've always been a sucker for Spider-Man noir, and like at the end when I saw him, bro, I was so happy. But I think Spider-Punk was really awesome in this. Like his design was sick, man. Like he was ripped out of like some classic English, you know, like book or something. I don't know, like tabloid, like something like that.
Yeah, just like a magazine sort of thing. Yeah,
just like heavy punk influence, like the Sex Pistols and just all of those bands that were so prominent in like the 90s in the UK. There's actually a funny line that he says in the movie. He's like, I like the AM and I hate the PM or something. He says something like that.
right.
And it's like, it's funny because it also reads as he hates the Prime Minister, which like the punk movement sort of began with the whole political conflict of them hating Parliament and what they were doing. So it's just a funny line that, you know, it's more geared towards the older audience. But yeah, artwork wise, I really, really liked Spider-Punk in this movie, and even his character I thought was really cool. So I'm really excited to see him in the second movie. But I mean, Spider-Man Noir is like he's just a favorite of mine. Like, he's so cool, bro. Like, yeah,
it's cool. It's going to be good to see him again next time. Well, we haven't prepared anything for the music segment, so we'll let you add something in later. You've been listening to a few songs.
I know for sure Hummingbird will go in there.
Okay,
so
cool.
That's
so
one of them.
Quickly, got a few minutes. What's your tier ranking for this film?
I'll do final thoughts and then I'll do tier ranking. So,
got 1 minute.
1 minute, okay. Really, really liked the artwork. Like I said, a huge improvement on the first. I think the story could probably still do with some fine tuning. I think it was a hell of a lot better than the first one. That's my main issue with the first one is the story, mainly the villain. So I think they improved on the villains big time in this one, which is great. The Kingpin was just a weak point of the last movie.
It was.
I think the music could have been better. I think there's things that they exchanged. Like there's better points that they did in the first movie, but there's also better points that they did in the second movie. So honestly, I would rank it about the same as the first one. So I'm going to give it an A. But I do prefer the first movie, and I've had some time to think about it. I think the first movie is more streamlined. It's more efficient. It's less reliant on cameos and people jumping out of their seats and pointing at the screen. I think the first story is just a really, really solid, compact origin story, which is always a blast to watch. Only time will tell how well this movie stands in 5 years' time.
Right, so an A rating gets the same as the previous one. So you think that they're comparable, same level of quality on the first and the second?
Same level of quality, but I prefer the first one. It has a slight edge.
Right. And you think that the third one could take it beyond those rankings, or are you hopeful, or do you just think same quality would be great?
I would like it to be better. I don't think it's possible, but from what we've seen, it definitely could be.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see as well, like how this film holds up over time, because the first one's held up really well so far. I would still give it, I don't know if did we give it just A's last time? I think we did. We didn't get, maybe we were a bit, okay, so we didn't have the variants, right? Okay, so, because I think I'd be very, very close to giving the first one an A+. Yeah, it'd be hard to find a reason not to give it an A+, if you know what I mean.
Trust me, I've watched the first movie plenty of times, and I've wanted to give it an A+, 5-star rating so many times, but Kingpin's motives always hold me back, unfortunately.
That is true. And I feel like the same issue applies here, because we don't have the full extent of the villain's motives yet, right? So I do think that the third one might be better than this one, but it's hard to compare because that first one is a really tight origin story and it does its job very, very well. Some incredible sequences in that film. So I think for me, let's give the Into the Spiderverse a hypothetical A. I want to give this one an A- to just stick it behind, because I do think it's not as good as the first one. I think this film does what every sequel should do, and that being, to respect the original film, take those plot lines and build on it, expand the world, which this film certainly does. But because, this film has some loose threads, and I feel like some of the family scenes dragged at times, like we were covering a lot of ground again and again. I feel like it wasn't as tight as that first film, but it's very minor nitpicks sort of thing. It's not like they stuffed it up. They did a great job. Fantastic job. For me, I'm going to have to watch it again a few times, obviously, but I'm going to keep it on the A- for now, just to be safe.
Do you think it could go up?
Absolutely. And I think it could go up retrospectively as well. So I think if the next film comes out and it has really interesting, story behind the Spot and behind Spider-Man 2099, then this film's going to be really, really good, because it's going to be cool to get that set up for then the payoff. But at the moment, we're just left with the setup. Is it the setup? Which is fine, But in the way that Dune Part 1 was a great movie and also set up for the next movie, I feel like this wasn't as good of a movie on its own, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'll have to listen to the music a bit more. And just enjoy it a few more times, but I'm looking forward. I'll have to save the date for when the 4K comes out, because I'll be buying that very quickly.
Yep. Well, that sort of brings us to a close on the episode. Thank you for listening. If you would like to follow us on Instagram, you can do so at the Rewatch Pod. And if you'd like to subscribe to our YouTube channel, just search the Rewatch on YouTube. Obviously, we have a Spotify playlist, which you can find just by searching the Rewatch playlist. What are we doing for our next episode, Sam?
That's a good question. We might...
I think you had some... Yeah, what were you going to say?
We'll be heading to the cinema again soon, because obviously we have the highly anticipated film, No Hard Feelings. And then we also had The Flash with convicted criminal Ezra Miller, which we have to do a podcast on, because somebody needs to hold this film accountable for its crimes, and both in the visual effects department and on the beaches of Hawaii.
Oh my god. And in Walmart.
It's our job. When the mainstream media don't hold convicted criminal Ezra Miller to account, you can rely on the Rewatch boys to get the job done.
Hell yeah, you can.
So tune in next time for The Flash confirmed.
Well, yeah, obviously there's a few movies coming up. Sam clearly has feelings towards No Hard Feelings, so we might have to do a pod on that.
Yeah, we got to do Mission Impossible.
I was just gonna say.
We got to do Barbie and Oppenheimer as well. Might do both at the same time we've been talking about, so that should be fun as well.
Yep. But expect no hard feelings.
Oh, that's a guarantee. I mean, the rest of them, 25% chance, but hard feelings is 103% chance.
Oh God, what are we gonna get ourselves into? We're definitely not seeing an IMAX viewing of that. I can tell you that right now.
But we definitely are. Day one.
You can go see an IMAX viewing of it.
Trust me, man. This is a movie you need to see on the big screen.
No, bro. I'm not paying like $16 to see this movie. Radio. We'll catch you next time.